Did you know that 3 out of 4 adults in American Samoa are living with obesity? That's almost 75% of the adult population with obesity. That's almost double the amount compared to the United States. Can you imagine just growing up in a place, right? And that place just happens to have a certain zip code. And just because you grew up there, that alone really just increases your chances of developing obesity. That's pretty crazy if you ask me. Did you know that most people still believe that obesity is a personal failure, that it's because of a lack of willpower, that it's a personal choice? I mean, do you seriously believe that people with obesity wake up and say, I choose obesity today? Yeah, no. It's a complex disease, and there's so many different causes of obesity, right? You've got genetics, you've got the environment, social economic factors, things like the medications that you're taking, sleep, how stressed out you are, and even your gut microbiome. All of these things play a role. There are many health organizations that have even declared that obesity is a disease, right? Coming from the NIH, the WHO, even AMA, they have all declared this over the years. And yet, society has still yet to catch up. And not just society, think about insurance companies even, right? So most health insurance plans, they say they will cover treatment if it's a chronic disease. But when it comes to obesity, even though obesity has been recognized as a chronic disease, insurance companies still refuse to cover things like obesity medications, weight management programs. It's a double standard. And that is such a huge disparity when it comes to the treatment of obesity compared to other chronic diseases. So there's a lot of catching up to do that we need to do as a society. I'm a board certified internal medicine and obesity medicine physician. I grew up in American Samoa. I now practice in the US, and I have seen firsthand just how much obesity can really affect not just individuals, families, entire communities, right? And I mean, there's so many places that have been affected by this. I've seen it in my patients, in my own family, and heck, I've even seen it in myself. I've experienced this firsthand. So a couple years back when I was pregnant with my daughter Zoe, she just turned 3. I remember standing on the scale and then looking down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that number before. I was nearing 320 pounds. And, I was already a practicing doctor at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what the heck, man, if I weigh this much and I'm out here advising my patients on how to lose weight, what to eat, how to exercise. I mean, I just felt like a fraud, It's like, who am I to tell people how to live their lives when I myself couldn't even get it together, right? So there was a lot of guilt and shame in myself around that time because of the way that I wasn't effectively treating my obesity. And I thought, given all my years of school, all those years of studying, education, training, and I couldn't figure it out, what hope do my patients have? And I mean, I tried everything. I did low carb, I did low fat, keto, intermittent fasting, I did Weight Watchers, ideal protein. I mean, name it, I've tried it. All whatever the fad was at the time. It was just nothing worked, nothing stuck. I mean, sure, it'll work like in the beginning when you first start a program, you're all gung-ho, you're like in 110%, you're super motivated. But the problem is you do okay for a little bit, but eventually it doesn't stick. It's not sustainable. And before you know it, slowly but surely, the weight starts to come back, and then you gain it back and then some. And that was the problem. It wasn't until I finally realized that obesity is a disease, and because it's a disease, you really need to treat it as if it is a chronic disease, because chronic diseases deserve chronic treatment. And I had been treating it the only way I knew how, right? And the way that I was taught and the way that I was advising my patients is to treat obesity, it was about calories in, calories out. Now we know that that's not entirely true. It's a lot more complex than that. Or, I would tell people, and I would do this to myself, I'm like, I just need to eat less and move more. Isn't that frustrating though, when you hear somebody tell you that, like, hey, the reason why you're not losing weight is because you're eating too much and you just need to move more? As if people with obesity aren't already eating well, aren't already eating a certain amount, not necessarily a very high amount. And, a lot of people with obesity exercise pretty regularly. I didn't realize at the time that I was just not using all the tools available in order to treat obesity. You could do lifestyle modifications, diet and exercise. You need that no matter what. You know what I mean? It's like with any chronic disease, lifestyle is where you start. But sometimes lifestyle modifications, it's just not enough. Now, with that being said, do people need medications in order to lose weight? Absolutely not. There are some people who are able to lose weight, just with lifestyle modifications, but that is like far and few in between. But will it hurt to take medications? Not necessarily. No, it really depends on what your medical history is, right? That way you and your doctor can figure out what the best treatment option is for you. Think about it this way. Hypertension or high blood pressure, that's a chronic disease. And how is that diagnosed, right? So you diagnose hypertension by having multiple elevated blood pressure readings, right? And it doesn't matter if you're having symptoms or having no symptoms. Once you meet the criteria by having those elevated blood pressure readings, you automatically get a diagnosis of hypertension. Same thing with diabetes, right? So diabetes is diagnosed by having elevated blood glucose levels. There are different ways to do that, but basically, once you meet that criteria, you get a diagnosis of diabetes. People do not have to argue that diabetes and hypertension are chronic diseases, regardless of how they are feeling, right? So it doesn't matter if they're having symptoms, they don't have symptoms. Once you meet that criteria, you automatically get those diagnoses. How about obesity? People with obesity can go in and out of their doctor's offices, but not necessarily have the obesity even be brought up, right? Or even if it is brought up, how often are you met with the, hey, you just need to eat less, eat better, and then move more, and not necessarily be offered other options or even clear directions or instructions on what to do as far as lifestyle changes are concerned. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, I really want to highlight and share with you some of these eye-opening statistics. I'm going to be looking at a journal article that came out of The Lancet. This was back in March of 2024. And they looked at a number of people. There were more than 1 billion people worldwide living with obesity. That's 880 million adults and 159 million children. But let's look at this table. So let's look at the women first. The two places in the world with the highest obesity rates when it comes to women, Tonga and American Samoa. 81% of women in Tonga and American Samoa are living with obesity. This is followed by Samoa, Tokelau, Tuvalu, Cook Islands, Nauru, Niue, Egypt, and Micronesia. And if you take a look at this list, 9 out of 10 of these places are Pacific Island nations. How about the men? Of all the places in the world with the highest obesity rates when it comes to men, American Samoa and Nauru have the highest rates. And you can see that the US is all the way down there on the list, coming in at 10th place. So why is this even important? So obesity is not just about the weight. It's a chronic disease, and it can actually decrease your lifespan by up to 8 years, right? So just because somebody is diagnosed with obesity, you can say goodbye to 8 years of your life. This is associated with at least 236 comorbidities or other complications. And when it comes to cancer, 40% of all cancers are actually weight related. And that's 13 different types of cancers. So what is going on with the rising obesity rates, not just worldwide, but in the Pacific nations? So there are several things that we can think about. Certain attitudes about food and body size definitely play a role. We are also pretty reliant economically on imported foods, processed foods, and things like that. And you'd think that living on an island that we have direct access to fresh, nutritious sources of food, but that's not always the case depending on where you grew up on the islands. And there's an overall decrease in the amount of physical activity just because of modernization. So as you can see, this is a pretty complex problem and not something that we would be able to solve overnight, of course. But so what can we start thinking about? What can we start doing at this point? We need public health education. We need policy changes to improve our access to food, and not just any food, but whole foods, nutritious foods, and not just imported processed foods. We need more cultural sensitivity and cultural competence when it comes to healthcare. There are also so many different social economic factors that play a role. So again, very complex. No easy solution. Not only is this problem or obesity as a disease, not only is it a complex issue, but it really doesn't help that we still have so much stigma. There's still so much weight bias. People with obesity are still being treated unfairly, being discriminated against just because of their weight. So we need to just keep advocating for change, advocate for better prevention strategies, treatment strategies, make these options available for everyone. We definitely still need to do more studies. We need more data and just policy change. If you found this information helpful, please like and subscribe. My channel is still pretty new, so I would love your help in spreading the word so more people could benefit from this. And if you like the content, if you want to hear about any future topics or anything else that you want me to answer or cover, please leave a comment below. So until next time, this is Dr. Tui signing off. And I just want to remind everyone that everyone here deserves care, respect, and understanding. So please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll catch you next time.